maybe somebody's
Oh,
their friends or
oh, friends. Okay. Oh, yeah, yeah. We open it to the rest of the humanity. Oh, Kai Lai. How are you, Kai Lai? Can you hear me, Kai Lai? Yes. Hello. Hello. Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Kai Lai, how are you? Oh. Okay. Hi. 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 Dr. Wong is here. I thought you're coming over to CenPRIS. Physical. Physical. You wanna come over? Oh, yeah, yeah. We actually have desserts and tongkat alik coffee as well. Alamak, okay lah, okay. But yeah. Anyways, well, the chair is not here. Diana, the Azim is the chair. Oh, that's yeah. Okay. It's almost 9 o'clock. Right. Okay. Almost now. Oh, okay, okay. Right. Morning. We can hear you. We can hear you. Yes, yes, yes. Especially those who are doing CSR too. She mean as you.
Very good job. I think a good job because last time I heard about her presentation, I think it's quite different. Last time it sounds to be a little lecture, not that 组织到一起 good organized, but this time I think, yeah, she really did a lot. For example, about the case study things, I think moved on a lot. Maybe it's my suggestion, and also for myself, for me, I think it should be a presentation, not just read. Maybe we should tell people about my research. It's my research, and on this topic, I think. I'm not sure. And about CSR, I think she really do a lot about this industry, focus on this construction industry. I think that's good because it's a very unique industry. Thank you.
Yeah. Just a quick note: the evaluator is not here yet. The February. Because it's scheduled at 10 o'clock, so we have some time to be to distress. The February. Yeah. When we arrive, we can start as soon as possible. Then he'll be there. He'll be here in person. He'll be here in person. Okay. Yeah. Dr. Wong did not know there will be live here, so he said if he knows he will come become in person to CenPRIS. Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Dr. Wong. Dazim, shall we? Yeah. Yeah, and we have Tongkat Ali coffee too. So yeah, perhaps next time in the communication we need to be clear that we also hold it in our meeting room. Maybe that it wasn't clear, I guess. Uh, yes. Yeah. A few more coming in. So the Dazim will take a quick break, yeah, before we start again. All right. Before we start again, until all right. There's some refreshments out there. The Chang today is like Jedi, all black. Black.
Not the Darth Vader.
Not Darth Vader. But in Chinese tradition, black is that's what. That's what I thought too, right? The Kok Wing, right? The Kok Wing.
Yeah.
He's black guy. He's black and all that, right? So the one student wanted to come to USM,
他不是那个帮我看上的图表，他是不是没有用那些的那种？
but then she
就是图表不一样，帮我看一下的，他说都是没有用的。
Korean, Chinese too.
Oh.
So supervised by the government himself because she look at it. So all black, she's not into black, because it's not a black thing, because the Chinese also, right? But then she eventually found out why black, because black is meant for the emperor.
Oh, okay.
So they got confused that it's emperor, so it's
Oh, right.
he got emperor. So black is a powerful code. It's like yellow for the sultan here, lah.
No, I think dynasty Qing or Tang, I can't remember, is black.
Black,
Yeah,
maybe,
black.
maybe it's one of the traditions, maybe. Yeah, maybe Qing Wang, we're black,
Yeah.
supposedly.
The whole dynasty is using black.
Black. So black is the power for royal color, so powerful color. So you're not supposed to wear black if you're not the king, supposedly.
Bro, I always tell people ask me in black, I always say Warna Nabi.
Oh, that's a bit
Warna Nabi.
You found ready? Yeah. 准备了吗？
准备了，准备了。
Did you turn off?
Have some.
Sam,
Yeah. A bit nervous.
ah,
A bit nervous.
try pakai.
Yeah.
Belakon cuba pakai.
Oh, try one, yeah?
Ya.
Nice scarf. Scarf,
Belakon.
right?
Belakon
Huh?
dari Jogja. Belakon. Namanya belakon.
Belakon.
Belakon. Ya.
Belakon. Alright.
Belakon.
Macam ni. Oh,
Jawa. Ya.
yeah,
put
this is the
until-
first time. Oh, nice. Belakon.
Belakon. I give one to Prof Ivan.
Yeah, I saw in the picture. Oh, nice.
Ya.
Yeah, I take a stand.
Ya. Belakon.
Yup. Taking selfie.
Are you ready, Yukon?
Yes, I'm ready.
With that. Yeah.
Thank you. I like this very much.
Next time you go to Jogja, you need to buy that.
Yo.
When you visit Borobudur Prambanan.
Honey,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
can I sit?
Hmm?
Where can I sit?
Later you present in front of it.
I should
Stand up.
sit there.
Yeah, stand up there.
Stand.
Yes. Presentation.
Oh, we have to stand here.
Yeah. It's the real presentation.
I control the slide or
I control.
you control.
Yeah. I control.
Oh, kat situ tak boleh.
Huh?
Here cannot.
But I can also get. It depends on you. If you can choose.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like for presentation, it's better for us to stand
Yeah,
by the
okay.
slides, so people will see both you and the
Oh,
slides.
they
together.
see from there lah.
Yeah, or maybe you can there.
Also, the camera can see from here.
Yeah. Boom. Why?
I'm nervous.
Huh?
I'm nervous.
Me too.
Why you want to present there?
No, is it?
Huh?
No, cannot.
Equal?
Yeah.
Yes.
I prepare some questions. But I'm afraid I can't say something when I stand there.
This is a practice.
Will they ask some difficult questions?
I don't know. You're not ready. That's ready.
anything.
Cannot really.
They don't ask Zhao
Huh?
so I hope they don't ask me. Found difficult. My friends admire me. We have delicious food.
Ah. Yeah,
加油
No problem.
他只要别问我太难的就行了。
yes.
30，不报我不会。我7月满等东西。咋了？你讲啊？我上哪去？吃为止，你快点给我。
哎呀，
导师的那个东西，我觉得可好吃了。一会儿人家就走了，那是吃。我去，什么这玩意儿？还真是。
Why just more?
It is a literal translate 东格阿里，东格阿里。
那是啥
什
呀？
么东格阿里？
它其实是人参科。It is a family of ginseng. 但是它是一棵树，it's actually a tree. And
它的根
里面，它的根，
是的根啊，
它的根削成片，然后拿来
它的根很长，也很硬。
你的普通话怎么突然变这么好？
对不对啊？这样
是的，对，
它
很硬
又长
的
又硬的，对不对？
呀。
对。
Something may introduce the subjective bias in the researcher. May lead to the subjective bias in the researcher. Therefore, when selecting participants, I will be as objective as possible and avoid only selecting participants who can support my research results. Finally, credibility.
Stability, credibility.
Consider context and the breadth of the research. A sample of 40 times to have sufficient data to analyze and understand the kind of source in general. 看见，当那些老师夸你的时候，他们是的脸上特别的骄傲，然后点头微笑，哎呀，我就觉得引以为傲啊。Information that reveals the participant feeling and the different areas of the to guide parents to discuss self-measurement and behaviors about the value and importance of many depend on the interview with parents and companies, including
Yang online siapa Pak? Ini mahasiswanya.
Hah?
Yang online mahasiswa.
Ya, tapi tadi sudah tinggal
Udah tadi.
yang Saule.
Tadi siapa ini penilai?
Tadi Dr. Mo.
Oh, yang dari sini. Oh, ini saya aja langsung mulai gitu. Sesinya jam berapa? Saya dikasih tahu jam 10.
Iya, jam 10 betul. Nah, tadi yang 9 orang naik.
Perasaan udah berapa kali Pak Ade presentasi tadi?
Belum.
Oh, belum ya? Nanti.
Ya, pokoknya tahun ini mau tak presentasikan.
Enggak, bukan hari ini.
Udah.
Oke. Perasaan yang kemarin yang terakhir juga presentasi kan?
Itu belum beneran, masih apa?
Oh,
supervision aja.
Ya ini mahasiswa Cina.
Kalau yang nanti Cang betul. Yang kita presentasi.
Thank you so much, Dr. Febri.
Saya ini kan online sebab dia.
Betul. All of the rest tersalah faham. Thinking is online, whereas
Dia tak
Webex
sebut
kan.
CenPRIS.
Tak sebut CenPRIS.
Ya. Dari CenPRIS tapi I kerja kat juta tanpa perak.
I think Dr. Azim sees it. Dr. Azim is the chairperson, chairing the session.
Doktor dari
Social Science.
Teknologi dari penyedia penilai.
Tajuk ini menarik. Negeri mana sini? Negeri mana sini? Museum mana sini?
15 museum. Ya, 12 dari Kelantan.
Anda cover semua negeri.
Stop juga. Paham? Paham tak kenapa?
Put a camera.
Yang timur di Okay, Prof. Zim. Okay, yeah, I will start my presentation now. Okay, selamat sejahtera, selamat pagi, esteemed CenPRIS members, supervisor, Prof. Riwani, evaluators, thesis committees, and fellow classmates. My work here is a research on the selected national museums in Peninsular Malaysia. The thesis looked into three main facets. First, national museum exhibition and representation. Second, Malay identity in Malaysia. And the last one about power. Second slide. Let me quickly elaborate the settings of the research with a brief background. Museum, a microcosm of material culture rendered with non-material culture that attempted in affiliated this material culture to its or certain civilization. Later, these material cultures are to be repurposed and given a new name, the museum display. Museum displays connects to selected moments in history for exhibition purposes. Thus, museum display is carefully selected and the order of the selections of museum texts involve power. Therefore, a chosen exhibition museum display from its repository is loaded with meaning. The order of museum display in its museum exhibition halls is always loaded with ideas. The arrangements of museum display mean something else. The negotiations of power in the order of this museum exhibition in items potentially receive influence by nationalism, nation building, colonialism, imperialism, and modernity, and etc. After I explain two facets, now I want to explain the third setting of Malaysia, Malay ethnicity. Malaysian context in concern, the nation-state setting would be a post-colonial state, and as a relatively new polity, nation-state comes with a needing for nation building and identity construction. Malaysia national museums are not alien to it. National museums that are close related to nation buildings promotes richness of museum display that serve as museum texts about Malay identities in Malaysia nation-state framework. As feature of ethnicity in concern, the nation-state preserve, promote, and carry Malay identities which can manifest from the museum text. Through my work, I try to explain the museum exhibition and their order that put into crucial eliminate in the order of projecting Malay identity narratives in Malaysian nation-state framework. Text. My motivation for delving into the research problem arises from an identified empirical gap and the theoretical gap. Empirical gap shows besides scholarly work on museum, tourism and education in Malaysia, research in the realm of nation-state Malay identities and power remain a field to be explored. Theoretical gap shown scholarly research acknowledge the feasibility to conduct research on nation, museum and identity could be adopted or modified to excuse in Malaysian context. Okay, in this complex web of the intersection, my research is to address the order of national museum display and museum narrative of the representation of Malay ethnic identity narrative that reflects from museum display. Museum holds an indispensable place for repository in archive and exhibition Malay identity. The memories of Malay civilization are to be understood from the elements that representing Malay ethnicity in Malaysia. This museum display and museum narrative carry memory of Malacca Sultanates, Melaka saat ini, the kerajaan state bangsa, the importance of Islam religion are offered as a form that potentially represented Malay identities in Malaysian nation state. These selections of museum texts are meaning loaded on the potential that construct and negotiating Malay ethnic identity in Malaysia nation state framework. Okay, in acknowledge to this dynamic, 3 research questions was formulated. How do national museums in Malaysia portray Malay identity? Second, what are the historical narrative for Malay identity in the museum display and museum dioramas of the national museums in Malaysia? What are the typology for alternative discourse for the portrayal of Malay identity in the national museums in Malaysia? This slide are actually the chosen keyword to actually illustrate the key elements in my literature review. However, on catching on the time, I'll use one slide to describe my theoretical discussion and literature review. Next slide. Okay, here I have 3 main elements in my literature review. The first one is the slide in actually the purple color. Abu Talib talks about museum annexity that influenced by nationalism and nation building in Malaysian framework. Published by NUS. Ni talks about the evolution from museum since Renaissance come into picture on what is Wunder Kamar, or actually the bilik, the kamar, or actually the room for actually imaginative towards actually museum, how museum changed into public museum and the absorption of modernity. Swatch talks about archive and also power. What information is actually selected that remains important to archive is actually illustrated by power. Burnett's classical reading in The Birth of Museum give actually explanation on museum by using Gramsci says to dominant ideology, museum as actually a cultural institution, superstructure and base. The superstructure dominates the dominant ideology to the museum. However, and another research by Burnett, it actually talks about, he moved actually on so-called using Foucault to analyze museum, when actually museum had been actually influenced by a structure of knowledge. It brings to the third theme on the episteme and power by Foucault. Anderson talks about imagined community. Imagined community, how actually a modern nation state intact with grabbing the history to legitimize the nation state. Of course, it talks about print capitalism, how museums, postcard, books, and print media shapes actually nationalisms, shape actually a common identity and a common understanding to its people, regardless on whether they know each other or not. Anderson used that term. Okay, Trevor Roper in The Invention of Tradition talks about the things that we call it as authentic, the things that we call it as vintage, put into museum display is something that relatively new in the nation state framework. Okay, move to actually annexity, Malay annexity. Fascinating books from Andaya and Miller will actually tell, Andaya tell us about Malay, the primordial and also the ethnic boundary about Malayness and Malay identity, same as Miller talks about Malay identity and also the local knowledge of the Kerajaan state and also Kedatuan and etc. Judith Nakata and Masna Muhammad will talk about Malay identity in terms of Malaysia, when the importance on Islam and Malay identity is similar, intact together. The third one will be put in a words will be episteme is actually on Foucault's structure of knowledge. So I will ask, what structure of knowledge influenced the order of museum display in the museum? Here I will claim that modernity is the final, not to say final, contemporary thoughts that actually influence the setting of the museum nowadays. And compared to Burnett that I talked just now about Gramsci, but Foucault see power as a type of negotiation, which is you can put power is being normalized, but dominant power do not come with force or coercion, but it comes with negotiation. Okay, next slide. Yeah. Okay, the methodology here, this is a non-numerical research based on qualitative it is much to interpretative social science. So I will use actually positivism in terms of the inquiry, and the research strategy here is inductive reasoning to describe, and also inductive reasoning. I collected social sampling also or data from 15 museums in Peninsular Malaysia, and after I collect the data, I will actually explain on theory description, the phenomena explained with theory. So I choose case study approach. To execute this case study approach, I choose single case embedded case study. I cut into it is national museums in Peninsular Malaysia, but I cut into unit analysis, and the measurement tools here is I formulate ideal types and themes. Of course, it links back to the ideal types and themes, link back to literature review and also my research question. Hadith, yes. Okay. To actually catch the time, I got 10 minutes. Okay, to catch the time, I will actually please turn to another slide. Yeah. Okay. The slide just now links to this slide, and here I will actually find my findings finds that that's 4 sub-ethnic identity which is represented in the selected national museum. It will be the Bugis, the Javanese, and the Minangkabau, and also the Acehnese. Okay, so here the first one, the themes is actually Bugis. It will, the Bugis representation in the museum exhibition and also display. It will actually concentrate on the dynamics of Merantau worldview, and Bugis is actually represented on vigorous, strong, and warrior-like visual image. Okay, the third one will be actually it mentions the primordial land of Sulawesi. But however, here I find that the narrative of the museum always come back to the nation-state framework. So it mentions that the Bugis actually comes to Selangor, so the sub-nation-state framework. Okay, second one will be Javanese, but it concentrates on the museum text concentrate on the Javanese in Johor State part of Malaysia, and the Javanese the representation is much more to artistic value, wayang kulit, music, riong borongan, and also the performance. And the museum also stated Java as actually a regional identity. It's actually a place. Okay, thanks. Okay, the red word here is actually the highlights of my finding. Acehnese sub-ethnic identity will actually be represented by the weapon in terms on the ruling class that leads back to the influence towards actually the sub-nation state representation. So it is always that something that, okay, Aceh, Malaysia element, Aceh, the nation state elements come in the picture. Of course, the last one will be the precious Acehnese gravestone, which represents the element of Islam in Malaysian framework. Okay, Minangkabau here, it will be actually represented in terms on the primordial land, which is actually comes from Sumatra, but I do not found any visible on the word direct, but the primordial land from Sumatra, and so-called the migration to Negeri Sembilan. I remain actually the museum text of migration, a modern term used to actually understand the movement of people compared to Adat. So here, Negeri Sembilan Museum, I will actually use a term called the Adat sphere. It is actually a museum that actually talks on a boundary. These are actually the boundary, the force field of actually Adat. And you have in Negeri Sembilan Museum, you have the arrival of Minangkabau people, equals important to actually the Islamic religion together in actually the description board. Okay, so that is actually the on architectural the horns shape Minangkabau house miniature, Pagaruyung as actually primordial, but it can be argued, and also the official custom of Minangkabau. I found that besides that, the Balinese, Maduris, Banjaris is actually represented very minor in terms of Kris, chic miniature, and also Busana. Right? Yeah, Hanif. Yeah. Thanks. Okay. So another thing should be ancient regime. So the Sriwijaya is actually represented on imaginative in the museum. The imaginative is actually on the spatial between the connection of Bay of Bengal towards South China Sea. So it always actually go back to the philosophy of Tanah Air when actually the manifestation of how important is air as actually the territorial in Nusantara. Sriwijaya is actually represented in terms of more ancient towards a Hindu Buddhism period. Majapahit in Malaysian Museum limited in terms of the ship miniature. It goes back to air also, but Malacca here, in line with national cultural policy and nation building, the needs of nation building, etc., it is well represented in terms of it is an Islamic-based civilization, it's an Islamic-based sultanate, and the sultan, you have a diorama which Sultan Malacca convert into Islam, and also, but Malacca, the narrative is destruct in terms quickly destruct on because of colonization. Okay, yeah. Okay, Chinese Sultanate, we actually go back to actually the description, go back to the Perak Sultanate, the influence of Perak Sultanate. Patani Sultanate will actually be used to describe on a boundary towards so-called the Nusantara or the Malay archipelago, a boundary on the non-Malay archipelago. So it is always that, okay, Patani after Patani is actually on the Siam. Right? Okay, Sulu Sultanate, although it is minor, but it is interesting to look at the narrative in museum. It is always say that, oh, Sulu Sultanate, but it is actually based on Borneo. It do not actually mention Mindanao or actually Palawan Island, but it actually, the description go back to the National Museum. And that's why they use the word Malay Kingdom in Borneo. And you have a Malay armor suit, which is the Malay Moro, but they use the word Southern Philippines. It's not Mindanao or Kesultanan, the Sultanate of Sulu, but it's actually Southern Philippines. Right, okay. Okay, so another thing should be colonialization and the impact towards the Malay archipelago. In the museum, Portuguese invasion will actually represent in terms on siege, suffer, agony, and the type of coloniality is micro-colony towards Malay world. The Dutch possible represented as actually the much more fair partnership. No one would actually dominate Nusantara in 1670 to 18th century. But things turned sour on the representation in Sultanate of Selangor. British Malaya in the representation in the museum, it is always a period that you subscribe to colonial modernity. That's why always perjanjian on the empire of paper. So you have the diorama on Sultan Abdullah of Perak signing actually the Treaty of Bangkok is well represented, and the machete that actually stamp JWW Birch is actually well presented in Museum Negara colonial section. Siam will be actually the portrayal of the tributary-based relations and also the replica of Bunga Mas, but I do not find Bunga Perak and Hantaran in Museum Negara. Of course, after the data collection, that's Bunga Mas and Bunga Perak in Kedah State Museum. Right, okay. Another theme should be the precious Malay manuscript. The Malay manuscript that I found is actually much represented on Islamic religion and the Malay identity. And the Malay manuscript that actually represented is much more of them is actually the usage of Jawi scripts, and you have the Malay manuscript that actually represents progress of modernity, which is on medication, story of the founding of the Sultanate, and also the codex actually presented is actually produced by paper. But Malay manuscript is much more, besides paper version, you have actually the lontar version, etc. But it is actually the modern, so-called modern bring a meaning that when print capitalism come into picture, Gudang press come in picture, what I call it as the modern paper on after the Gudang, what press? Press. The printing Gutenberg. Thank you. The Gutenberg printing press come in picture. Okay, right. Okay, so this is an example on precision handcraft actually Quran from Nusantara. Okay, yeah, Hanif. This is actually when you go to Museum Negara. When you go in, there's actually so-called on the Sejarah Melayu, which is a memory of the Malay annals, right? Hanif. Yeah. Okay, so this is actually a handwriting manuscript on actually medication, Kota Tinggi Museum, right? Hanif. Okay, so we'll go back to the themes on the usage of map. The maps that used in actually museum, maps is always actually a projection of power, but here maps actually been reused, repurposed into portrait of maritime trade route between, but it comes back to the center point at where is Malacca, and also museum repurpose the maps, the usage of map in terms of religion purposes, where is actually the populated Islamic city in actually Nusantara, and it actually create boundaries on any city where is actually how big is actually Nusantara, and this boundary is actually quite fluid. And when it comes to Minangkabau and Bugis, is actually on ethnic migrations and also on the primordial land, and also the maps and also the Ufti. Batu Nisan Aceh, to conclude on the time frame, it is actually representing in terms of Islamic religion, decorative and motif, iconography of the tombstone, and also the aristocracy use of the gravestone. Yeah. Okay, I think the last one would be actually on a figure of Malay hero, which is on the Hang Tuah, is on a memory on the Malay hero. You have the slogan of Takkan Melayu Hilang di Dunia in Museum Negara, but in Palace Museum of Melaka, it goes back to actually the miniature of the mural in Museum Negara, but the narrative adding in a lot of Hang Jebat and Hang Tuah, right? Okay, so to conclude, in a brief conclusion of the finding, the relations between National Museum text and Malay ethnicity is not without its complexity. Museum exhibitions are presented by nation-state framework of Malay identity construction and reconstruction, nation building, colonial legacies, and modernity. So before I stop, I extend my gratitude, kesyukuran to my supervisor, Prof. Riwani, who have very patient with his supervisor all the time. Throughout my academic journeys until now, I have benefit from learning how to conduct research and exposure of knowledge towards Nusantara, along with the academic pathway under him. I humbly thank everyone for listening to the findings presentation, and I shall wait for the evaluators and committees to strangle me with comments, questions, and improvement. Sekian, terima kasih. Yeah. Dr. Chang, yeah. Thanks.
Cakap. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Tuan Pengerusi Dr. Prof. Azim, dan juga and also our presenters today, Mr. Chang. Yeah, I was invited to give some comments on your progress report, and I also read your abstract. So, based on this presentation only, I would like to say that it seems that I get the impression that you know what you're doing. Then I think that's a good impression that you gave. So, but I'm not. My knowledge about these topics, maybe I know some concept that you mentioned, some scholars that you mentioned that had their ideas. Maybe my knowledge is about the surface, yeah? But I can give some suggestion later. But I think it's better if I start with the questions lah. I know that you already passed the proposal defense, and you already doing field work. But maybe are you done your field work, or you also have a plan to do visit museum again after this, or
I already
are you
done.
satisfied what you have get so far?
I satisfied what I get
Okay,
so far
so-
from 15 museum on a few.
All right, and then you already got the answer of your research objective lah. Yeah, I also think that that's enough lah. What you have presented. In terms of the methodology, I would like also to know whether you only visit museum to see the display, or you also talking with the people who run this museum. Why I asking this? Because the display, the diorama was there in the first place, right? But of course, as we know, what happened was we had the regime change, and maybe it also affect the narrative, right? Uh, Previously, during the UMNO BN domination, in our political systems, they create the narrative, and that we can see at the museum, at the diorama, the display. I don't know whether the regime changed when we had the more pluralistic governments, which is mean not only Malay domination government, especially after 2018, right? I don't know whether it affects. Maybe they change the display, maybe they change the narrative inside the museum, because I think we agree that museum is very important sites of power. How the people in power to create narrative through the museum. I think it's a well documented research everywhere, not only in Malaysia. So that's why I'm asking whether you also try to find out, talking with the people in the museum, is there any certain change in the narrative selari with what the current government want, for instance? Is there any because you also didn't mention the scope of your study, when you started looking at this museum, maybe after 2018, for instance, after the regime change. I don't know what happened. Maybe before that, is it the same, the narrative, previous and after regime change, for instance? I don't know. Maybe it's not part of your research objective, for instance, but I think it's good if you can also inform in your thesis that little bit problematize that, right? I think it also can be a good finding if you find there's something interesting happen there, right? Yeah, you mentioned also about the some concept. You mentioned about the Anderson. Of course, there was a debate. Even like that, the concept also contested. I'm sure you are read the works from Samsul Amri, for instance, the Nation of Intents. I think it's related. You didn't mention that, but I'm sure that some in your thesis maybe, maybe, and also the concept of hero in Malay society by Syed Maruf. There's some suggestion. I also want to know, because your presentation, except for the last part, you compare the National Museum in the Malacca museums, but the rest of your presentation, it seems that your finding is more like general. You're not looking at the specific museums, right? It seems that the narrative, I get the impression that all of the narrative that you find in your fieldwork, all of this museum tell the same narrative, right? Maybe must be nuance, right? Maybe in Perak they have a different kind of perspective. Maybe they have more local contents, in maybe the Perak history only, or compared to other museum in different states, for instance, right? Whether I don't know whether it's helpful to see the differences, because like I mentioned again, I don't know whether this is have an effect or not. Different states they have a different government. In certain states they have a BN or Malay party governments, and in different states they have a different compositions of the government. I don't know whether it is affect the narrative. So maybe, yeah, that's why I don't know whether you want to specify that, because in each museum, maybe they have of course they have a different display and diorama, and whether that differences also lead to the different narrative, or they also tell the same narrative, right? So maybe I don't know whether you want to answer that you want to tell that in your thesis or not. Yeah? But I just raised the question for you to think about. You don't have to answer that. Yeah, right. And also you mentioned about I think this is the the contested ideas or identities of Malay itself. Yeah, you mentioned about the Aceh, Banjar, Java, and etc. I think it's always debated, right? But in Malaysian context, I think uh, the grand narrative is uh, quite clear that outside the Malay, uh, sometimes they call it pendatang. You know, you have also, I think you can problematize this. Yeah, Java, Malay. Yeah. I don't agree with that. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I don't agree. But the in the public domain, mostly, especially in the politics, they call the some entities a pendatang. You know, that's a common. But based on your narrative as well, right? People from Aceh and many other Banjar and many other region as well, they don't call it as a pendatang. So I think this is the opportunity for you to problematize it, to debate it, and to find your own conclusions. Find your own conclusion with this kind of phenomena based on what you have seen in the museum. And then I don't know if I still have. Yeah, I stop there. Yeah, for my first, if I have, maybe if you want to give some more response to that, and then if I have a further question, I will ask later. Thank you. But I'm interesting to know. I think this is a very good, very interesting topic. Yeah, very interesting, very important thesis as well. I'm sure that you have done much. It's not easy to to consistently visiting these museums. Yeah, I just wondering some like methodology, whether you also look beyond observation into the diorama and displays, for instance, right? Okay.
Can I respond or not respond, just to explain?
Yeah.
Just to explain. Okay. Thank you, Doctor, for the comments, the insights, inputs. For the diplomas, etc., I go to every museum here, and actually, almost every sections, I take photos. Every displays, I take photos, and also the museum text, I also take photo to it. So I actually archive every photos in this 50 museum. So from there, not just visit, but I itu apa cakap, I archive it, and after that I would set teams to actually put all actually the display to actually teams. That's the teams that formulated just now. Okay. After that, if on the museum people part, because I'm looking on the display itself without actually the museum actors. The museum actors, they are actually those people who make decision, but those actually display is actually the end product. I go back to Foucault on because the order of this is actually the end product of the decision maker. So I actually exclude them to actually look at the museum display. However, museum until now, it is actually, if come to the federal one, it is actually binded and projected with national cultural policy. So as national cultural policy is still concerned, the narrative is still there in projecting Malacca, etc. So even certain museums, they take certain parts of sheets up to Malacca. But I acknowledge that if compared to 10 years ago, yeah, I actually gathered data during Pakatan Harapan period, which is
When you speak louder, the voice might not be captured.
oh,
Or closer here. Or,
Your presentation quite louder.
yeah, presentation.
But only for the online
I
audience, I think.
use all the energy. Okay, all right.
No, maybe I just want to. Can you confirm that the narrative that you get from the museum it's the same from the first place? Because there is the discourse. I think after the regime change that to change the textbook of the history, for instance, right? There's a discourse. I don't know whether it also happened in the museum or not. So maybe you just can confirm that that the narrative that we see in the museum is the same like in the first place of the since the day one lah, for instance. If there's a change, though, I think that can become one of the point that you can discuss in the thesis. So yeah, that's all. Yeah, you can continue.
Okay. And then to share also, Doctor, I think I'll construct a typology about.
Louder.
Okay, I'll construct a typology
Or
about
closer.
The sub-nation state level museum. Okay, as long as Malaysia is concerned, it's a federal state. So we have the federal museum, we have the state museum. So the state museum, the negeri, the state museum, okay, the state museum can actually have their uniqueness. So if comes to the museum in Negeri Kelantan, they will actually have kecopong, which is very local to Negeri Kelantan. But for museum, for Wayang Kulit Gede, in Thailand, you have a shared culture called Nan Thalom. It's actually a shared Wayang Kulit, which is in State Museum of Kedah. And State Museum of Kedah give also the mention on Malay manuscript like Mero Mahawangsa, and also you have a Syair Perang, which is I don't know where. No, I need to actually go inside to actually look whether it's actually based on the Perang Musuh Bising. So that's actually the localness that actually portrayed on museum. With Malacca Palace Museum, it talks about also the palace, the miniature of the palace in certain states. Yeah, I think the local I need to actually create that local typology. And Perak, you have actually the Jetung, where that it mentioned these are the hantaran or the precious gift towards actually the sayang, but it do not actually mention sayang, but it make a boundary on what I call it as the invention on so-called the northern Malay state. But the northern Malay states includes is it Kesultanan Reman and also the Patani. So Patani in so-called the Patani and the Kelantan influence is actually intact together with what I call it as the Patani Kelantan sphere, or how it mentioned is narrative. Yeah, this is I think the local typology that Doctor are going to construct this. And Aceh also, I have an argument on it is actually a regional identity, or is it actually on sub-ethnic identity, etc. Because the last bloodline of the Aceh Sultanate is actually Bugis, right? Okay. So
Yeah,
that's the
Bugis you mentioned.
and Batak is vanished away from the museum. Certain sub-ethnic identities vanished. But it's fascinating to see that how in sociology or anthropology, how identity is so free. I think contestation in Malay identity is something that fascinating, good, dynamic.
Yeah, I agree with that.
On the interview, there was a question from Dr. Febri about
Are you also talking with the people who management of the museum?
No.
Maybe, I don't know if yeah, yeah. Because I just wondering, sometimes you can get some insight, right? How they construct the narrative in the museums. If you're talking with the people, yeah. Of course, in the first place, you didn't mention that you wanted to do that, and you think that this is enough. Yeah. Me as an outsider, as an outsider, okay, maybe your examiners letters in your during your viva can also have the same curiosity, you know, and asking you the questions. Then the problem is whether you can answer that or not during your viva. I think based on your presentation, I think it is quite clear. I don't have any concern, right? But what you have written is different things, I think. Yeah, I didn't read your writing, so but I think so. You are very clear with what you are doing. You already answer the objective of your questions, objective of your thesis, and I think you are just doing fine. Just keep writing lah, finish, and then I'm sure that your supervisors will guide you to complete that. Right? I have no more other comments on this. Right? I don't know what's the procedures next.
You have to stop me if I'm talking about Malay civilization. I'll keep on talking.
Okay.
Okay.
It is very interesting.
Another one. Yeah, already here. Yeah. How would you defend the non-interview research? How would you defend that?
Okay. Okay. I'm from. Okay. If I defend that, I'm from com school. Okay. Okay. I'm from com school.
Yeah.
In media representation, we have encode and decode.
Okay.
Encode is actually the producer of the text.
Yeah.
Okay. The producer of the text. Decode is actually the media artifact or actually the content. So if I take museum as a media artifact, so decode is actually I look at how the order of these media artifacts, the encode, the end product manifests on what we call it as the secondary construction on reality. This is how, if I defend, if I based on using museum display to actually manifest the idea based on Foucault, on actually how it been the museum, the orders of actually museum artifacts actually decode that represents certain ideas of power that derive from national cultural policy, that derives from certain sub-nation state and certain state elements. If I defend,
Yeah.
I will really consider on if come to Waiwa, people ask on where is actually the part if I talk to the policy maker of the people from the museum.
Yeah, maybe if you look also from the different perspective, for instance, like we have the Indonesia regime change in 1998, but the narrative of the anti-communism was still intact. There was no change lah. We had in Indonesia they have a museum as well that portray, or the main narrative is the cruelty of the communism as a enemy of the states, right? The museum said, but this narrative was very strong during the Suharto era, and after the Reformasi, when the Suharto toppled down, the new government also maintained that narrative, right? I mean that even the regime change doesn't affect the what was displayed in the museum, for instance. But also we have a case like in the Germany. Now they are trying to uh, uh, erase the history of the DDR or East Germany. The museums, the buildings that's the legacy of the communist government in East Germans. Now they are try to erase that and recreate the new narrative that the United Germany now they try to the governments uh, the most historical building, for instance, is like the parliamentary building in the East Germany now has been demolished and been rebuilt with other landmarks, for instance. That's also an effort to to uh, the counter the narrative of the communisms during the era. So we have two different cases. The two different cases. So I think that's the important to see also beyond the text, beyond what you have seen in the museums. You also look at because you mentioned about the Foucault about the relation between the knowledge and power. So I think maybe it's useful also to look beyond the text and look at the politics. So that's why I'm asking you whether the regime change in 2018 affects also the narrative in museum, for instance, right? So yeah, that's only my comment.
You want to respond?
Yeah, I take it as an input.
Okay,
Yeah,
good. I mean, just for the sake of, if I may, Dr. Azib, just okay. Just because one of the things for CenPRIS, CPR now is no CPR is the policy dimension. So we should also take note that we should have a discussion on policy as well, policy implication. Right. So how would you propose some policy framework or policy way forward vis-a-vis museum, for instance. Yeah. So the the contention was is now, do we maintain history that was destructive to society, our society, the way we define it, or do we destroy it? Or to what extent should we destroy it? The Black Lives Movement in Black Lives Matters, BLM, right? In the States, Black Lives Matters movement. A lot of them destroy statues.
Even the Francis Light statues is
Yeah, but we love our Francis Light over here. We have light, light condominiums, Francis that and all that. We still love that. So, how do we go about doing that? Do we offer two narrative, contesting narrative? To what extent should we do that? Should we maintain the statues that colonize us, and how would you discuss on that matter? Right? It happens in museum too. Yeah.
Okay, I respond.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
Just a discussion.
Okay. Ali, okay. Can you my PowerPoint? Okay. Can you scroll to the last yang ke bawah sikit, lagi bawah. Yang itu blank, lepas bawah sampai habis. Sorry ya. Okay. Sampai habis lagi. Yang lagi. Lagi belakang. Almost finished the part. Okay. Yeah. Alright. Yang I think is this. Yang ke atas. Ke bawah. Sorry ya. Lagi bawah. Lagi bawah sikit. Lagi bawah sikit. Okay. Okay. Just to share lah. Okay, I think I love my work and I love Nusantara very much. Okay. Here how is actually my sharing. I aware on Jan Peterson to bring you on Jan Peterson code, which is affiliated to VOC, which is slaughter everyone in Banda Naira. So what is Banda Naira? It is actually the Spice Island in Moluccas Island. Okay, when we remember of Kesultanan Ternate. Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, the Chakalele war dance, in Banda Naira is actually muted with actually a material culture. It is actually we are muted. What happened is on the muted because there was a slaughter. John Peterson Kun on actually he slaughtered everyone because on the Wapala or the clove and also the nutmeg trade. So you can see that how colonialization impact the material culture and non-material culture, the tradition and the historical memory of a particular any group or any group. Okay, so to the Orang Kaya Banda Naira. So when we can see that John Peterson Code, the statue, is actually celebrated in Netherlands, and everyone is actually very angry because the government says that we have to actually celebrate our maritime history, etc. And if you ask the one of the descendants of Orang Kaya, if not mistaken, they say whether you want to disrupt that statue or not, they say why not we leave it there? To actually, I'm seeing that museum in terms of policy input can be a site of reconciliation, But however, in Singapore used Malay history to actually extend its legacy and legitimacy as a portrayal, a policy that portrayal we are the center of Malay world. This is what Singapore do. That's why you have actually a statue of the colonializer. I call him the colonializer. Stanford Raffles in the middle. But after a few years, they put actually Sang Nila Utama in front of it. So they use actually history to portray that as actually a maritime trade center. I think this, not on Stanford Raffles, but we would, Malaysia, have used the museum to actually come up with what I would call it as derived from Prof. Riwani, a Nusantara cosmology. A Nusantara cosmology which is inclusive in terms of the culture, in terms of its diversity and sub-ethnic group, and also the cultural encounters, which is make Malaysian museum much more global because maritime history, Malay history is part of global history. It is actually a connection towards Bay of Bengal to actually the South China Sea. And what I see is Malaysia, when it comes to the narrative, Sriwijaya and Malacca, we concentrate much on South China Sea. When you see a lot of items, it is. I'm not saying that Kruyu and China is not important, but a lot of artifacts is actually the Ming Dynasty artifacts and Qing Dynasty artifacts. But you would like to have artifacts from the Bay of Bengal also to connect actually Nusantara is actually the history in the middle. Okay, Francis Light on actually the territory of Penang, the territory of Kedah. It was actually a territory of Kedah. I would actually suggest that for sub-nation state framework, for Penang to have a straight settlement government, a straight settlement museum. We do not have a straight settlement museum because if comes to actually we say Kedah Penang, but that is actually a gap there, which is Malaysia do not have a straight settlement museum. My hometown itself, Setiawan, Perak, near Pulau Bangkok, is actually part of straight settlement, and people actually forgot that. Okay, of course, Telur Batik and Telur Watak is actually forgotten also in my hometown. But anyway, it comes back to Straight Settlement Museum. It will actually tell us that brief of actually the history itself to legitimize, not to say the legitimize, to actually tell people how is actually the involvement includes its state border. I know in Penang and Kedah border, you have actually a milestone which 3 or 4 languages, Jawi, Malay format, the Siam, and also English. I can't remember if we have the 4. So that is actually a break. So these can become actually policies that includes to to it. And in terms on CenPRIS point of view, I would actually say that like I joined a lot of Zooms during the pandemic, and I'm aware that one of the slides here is called Sumatra manuscript, which is now doing in SOAS. I tell my student to attend the Jawi classes, and he attended. He's doing actually on library, archive, and Malay work, how to use travel archive to make it into data or something, but not under me. He's actually doing in East Asia. But just to actually say that this material need to be constantly studied, archived for strategy usage. But that would actually be useful in knowledge production about the Malay world. It should be continued, and this is actually an example that how you connect to the policy on the history textbook itself need to actually have a maritime history point of view. Okay, so example from British Library, you have just now I talked about paper on why storage of knowledge is important. This is actually a part of Malay manuscript. I take it from British Library law. You have Mandarin words here, so I use Cantonese. Is actually 粵東同慶正版上子了盛大 something, but literal translation would be Cantonese. Okay, the province Canton. This is actually the quality paper. So the paper, the existence of paper here, it reflects also a trait that you use Chinese paper to actually write about Malay manuscript. So it's not just after the Gutenberg press, you use actually so-called modern paper, but it is actually elsewhere. So I think this not only trade but knowledge production of history is a need on a policy input to put into Malaysia National Museum, and Malaysia National Museum can carry one of the narrative is maritime Malay history as part of a global history. Right.
I have one more question, just out of curiosity, because when you visited all of these museums, the main narrative mostly I assume is about the nation building, right?
Yeah.
Which is mean that it also include other non-Malays, other race as well, their contributions, but you only focus on the Malay identities, which is mean that you exclude certain parts of the museum where you only focus on the Malay identities. Is it true?
Sorry, Doctor, just can you ask again?
Yeah, I assume
Okay.
what we can see from the museums, all of the 15 museums, mostly about the nation buildings, not only on Malay, which is mean that the narrative also the contribution from other ethnic as well.
Okay.
But your focus, your thesis focus is only looking at the Malay identities,
Yeah.
which is mean that you maybe in the museum there are certain part that you only ignore because it's not about the Malay identities, but also the bigger part of the nation building narrative as well. Is it true?
Yeah, I scope and my study scope look at only the Malay identity.
Which is mean that certain parts maybe you just this is not relevant, then you just ignore it, right? Yeah. But the narrative in the museum also acknowledge the role of the other ethnics as well, right? In the nation building process, for instance.
Multiculturalism.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the Chinese.
I think it's a word mentioned in your thesis as well. Okay, that's all.
Hope I answer your question.
It's a good discussion. So the thing about CPR, our Center for Policy Research, is that there's a policy part that we should include in our thesis, right? That will be our strong encouragement. The other one is our decolonizing agenda, and this is what you're doing too. So you discuss about colonization, and the discussion we just had now was about how do we approach this from a decolonizing approach as well. Do we discard? Do we incorporate Singapore is smart in doing that, by the way. But Singapore also have Raffles Hotel and all that, very prestigious. Stanford too, right? So, well, use that name to attract customers. But you know, in your thesis, maybe you can have deliberate discuss in the discussion part, right? On the introducing also the decolonizing discourse, right? Because it's very relevant to decolonization. Yeah. So, anyways, that's input.
Yes, I'm here.
You we continue.
Yang
Yes,
Minute.
I'm ready.
You want to sit closer, Yifeng, so that
Okay.
you want to sit closer so that we can. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So that we can capture your voice much more clearly, right?
I
Okay.
stand there.
Yeah.
就是你坐近一些，能收到你的那个声音。
Okay, over here. Can capture that. Yeah, yeah. Oh, got him. Oh, come. All right. Thank you for coming. Yeah, sorry the email
Yeah,
did not communicate the idea that you can come here. Right. Dr. Bok Kwaim is here too. Dr. Azim. Dr. Bok. Yeah. Right. Is Hanif is Dr. Muzakir here? Is he here? Oh, okay. Welcome, Wong Jowo. All right. Good morning. Good morning. Yes.
Hi.
Okay. Dr. February left. But he's coming back. He's coming back in a couple of minutes. He just refresh himself. Yeah. How's Surabaya? Okay. All right. Not too hot. Okay. I think you're. Dr. Azim, shall we proceed? I think Dr. Azim said you can proceed. I think you can. If you're ready.
开始。
开始了。
开始吗？
1、2、3，开始。
Okay. I will start. Hello, respected professors, my dear friends. I'm Feng Yufeng. It's my honor to show this presentation. My research topic is double reduction policy, Chinese parents' paradigms in Hebei, China. My contents include introduction, literature review, problem statement, research questions and research objectives, research methodology. Next. Introduction. Background. In recent years, in order to standardize education management and implement the fundamental task of morality education, governments at all levels and education authorities have issued burden reduction orders several times to guide the reform of teaching methods in the compulsory education stage, achieving specific results. However, there are still some problems which are still very prominent. First, primary and junior middle school students are overburdened, and short-sighted and utilitarian problems or prominent. Second, the disorderly development of off-campus training interferes with the standard teaching order. Third, the capitalized operation of the training market has led to frequent calls of profiteering. And next, double reduction policy definition. In July 2021, the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China issued the opinions on further reducing the homework burden of compulsory education students and the burden of off-campus training, abbreviation double reduction policy. It is required to reduce the workload and the time of primary and junior middle school students, reduce and standardize off-campus training behaviors to promote students' healthy growth and all-round development. Next, contents of the double reduction policy. Reduce the total amount and time of work in an all-round way, improving the level of after-school services in schools to meet the diverse needs of students. Adhere to strict management and comprehensively standardized off-campus training behavior. Vigorously improve the quality of education and teaching to ensure that students learn well in school. Strengthen supporting governance, improve support and guarantee capabilities. Next, implementation of the double reduction policy. The effect of the policy. After the introduction of the double reduction policy, compared with the past, the time for student activities has increased, and off-campus training institutions have gradually become standardized. However, implementing the policy requires persistent efforts from all aspects of society. Parents' cognitive bias of the policy. In the field of double reduction, cognitive bias is reflected in the failure of parents to understand and accept double reduction in a timely, correct, and comprehensive manner, because they failed to fully and correctly understand the double reduction. They developed a series of anxiety about the double reduction. It is an important psychological factor that hinders the further advancement of the policy. This research significance is that first, parents are critical educational participants. Parents' thought, emotion, and behavior patterns play a crucial role in understanding the effect of policy implementation. Therefore, this study will conduct in-depth research on the parents' paradigm and provide a new perspective to understand the impact of the double reduction policy. Second, this study will be the first to be conducted in Hebei province. The impact of local context on policy implementation can be better understood by conducting research in specific geographic and cultural contexts. Finally, the findings of this study will provide valuable insights for future policymaking. By gaining insight into parental responses, policymakers can more accurately assess how healthy policies are being implemented and how parents accept them. This will help to optimize policies, better meet the needs of parents and students, and achieve educational equity and quality improvement. Next, literature review. This part is divided into three aspects. The first, policy background and development history. Scholars have discussed the connotation and development history of burden reduction from different aspects. Next, policy implementation. It mainly focuses on the implementation problems, causes, and countermeasures of the double reduction policy. And finally, parents' response. Parents' attitudes and cognition are crucial in effectively implementing the double reduction policy. Next, problem statement. That current research mainly focuses on policy background, content analysis, implementation, suggested countermeasures, and parents' attitudes and perceptions of the policy. But more systematic research is needed on their responses to the policy. Therefore, this study will systematically study the thought, emotion, and behavior paradigms of parents with different school types in Hebei province on the double reduction policy, which will help us understand the impact of the policy. Next, reasons to research parents. Parents are essential participants and promoters of education, and their understanding and acceptance of policy and their behavioral responses have a crucial impact on the effectiveness of policy implementation. Parents are the most important implementers of the double reduction policy and play an irreplaceable role. Parents' cognition and behavioral response to the double reduction policy is the most real response to the implementation effects of the policy, and it is also the reference for the government to formulate, improve, and perfect the double reduction policy. Next, research questions and research objectives. Research questions or that what are the parents' paradigms of thoughts and emotions in relation to the double reduction policy? What are the parents' paradigms of behaviors in relation to the double reduction policy? What are the emerging typologies of the parents' paradigms? Then research objectives are that to examine the parents' paradigms of thoughts and emotions in relation to double reduction policy, to analyze the parents' paradigms of behaviors in relation to the double reduction policy, to develop the emerging typologies of the parents' paradigms. Next part is research methodology. Research samples. In Hebei province, this study will interview about 40 parents of primary and junior middle school, grades 1 to 9, students using semi-structured interviews with open-ended questions. Following the information saturation principle, when the information obtained during the interview is found to be repeated and no new important topics appear, the interview will not continue. Next, reasons for choosing Hebei province. First, geographical diversity. Hebei province includes urban and rural areas, and the geographical environment gives it a diversified educational background and family environment. This diverse environment provides a rich research object for studying parental responses to the double reduction policy. Mixed level economic. The level of economic development in Hebei province is mixed. This difference in economic development may affect parents' attitudes and behaviors towards education investment, thereby affecting their acceptance of the policy. And finally, representativeness of educational resources. The province has numerous high-quality education resources, but the distribution and utilization of these resources differ between urban and rural areas. This difference may affect parents' thoughts and behaviors of the double reduction policy. Next, purposive sampling. Purposive sampling represents a group of different non-probability sampling techniques. It relies on the judgment of the researcher when it comes to selecting the units, e.g., people, events, pieces of data that are to be studied. Usually, the sample being investigated is quite small, especially when compared with probability sampling techniques. According to the research objectives, this study will select parents from different school stages. For example, a primary school, junior middle school, and school types, for example, public, private, and collect relevant information on parents' thoughts, emotions, and behaviors on the policy. Next, abductive research strategy introduction. Abductive research strategy is used to understand and explain complex social phenomena. The idea of abduction, as expounded by Blackie, refers to the process of generating social scientific accounts from social actors' accounts. Technical concepts and theories are derived from lay concepts and interpretations of social life. Hence, the aim of the ARIs is the construction of theories that are grounded in everyday activities, in the language and the meanings of social actors. Abductive research strategy has 4 key steps. Step 1, entering social actors' world and capturing the knowledge and meanings. Step 2, social actors' everyday concepts. First order constructs. Step 3, technical interpretation, second order constructs. Step 4, theory building. Next. That's my presentation. Thank you for your listening. Thank you.
Dr. Azim has to leave for a meeting, so we will open the floor immediately. So I'll be taking over as the chair. So can we get input from Dr. Bob?
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for making time. Sorry for the email, the ambiguity.
I thought it was online.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Just now, Dr. Wong said that too earlier on.
Okay, it's good exposure because there's a double reduction policy. As always, when you sit inside a proposal defense, you learn about new things. So so I think it's a good topic because it's quite recent. Double reduction policy is just recent, like 2021. They just implemented it. I think it's a new research, and I think whenever you study a new research, right, it can become a framework. Your research can become a framework to study other policies as well. So, but I would like to comment on your title, the suitability of the title. It's just tiny bit because when you say parents, I'm not sure which parents are you referring to. So I'm just suggesting for you to be a bit more specific, as in you could add in K-12.
Can you speak louder?
Oh, sorry.
I
Cannot hear.
clearly.
I was just suggesting that maybe your title could be more specific, as in because when you say parents, it's very wide. The scope, are you covering all the parents in the whole China? So you could possibly add primary and middle, double reduction policy in China, primary and middle junior second parents paradigm in Hebei, China. A suggestion, so you can discuss with your supervisor.
Thank you.
So because when I read parents, what parents are you referring to? Just be a bit more clear on that. I think China is not the only country that is very into competitive education. You push your child, throw them in as young as possible to go and learn your ABC. You can't even properly learn about their social skill, but they have to learn their maths already. But it's not only in China. South Korea is very, very into this as well. So I'm just suggesting also you include other aspects, not other aspects, like include how are other countries doing as well in this aspect, and then you could probably compare, do a little bit of comparison and how is China, facing it, and how is South Korea. It's just more to like widening your scope, so that you become an expert in policies in involving children education.
Oh, you mean I should add this part in my literature review?
Or even in a little bit in the introduction as well, to show that it's not only in China, even in developing country, I think there are some that are quite into like academic.
Thank you.
And what else? Maybe someone else can go ahead first.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Talked about very important input there, because we want to show that when we do literature review, we want to just read on the topic, but around the topic as well and beyond the topic as well. So, South Korea, Japan is another case. Perhaps Singapore, maybe. I'm not sure. Singapore has the highest mathematics score in the world, if I'm not mistaken now. Mathematics score, right? So maybe the pressure might be high there.
Yeah, Singapore.
It's quite high too, I think. Yeah. So just the literature. What about? Dr. Muzakir, your turn. We cannot see your face, Dr. Muzakir. So like you're the secret agent behind the. Yeah. What's the difference between thoughts and emotion?
Difference.区别。
In your research question, right? You said, yeah.
Maybe. Parents, when the parents heard the double reduction policy, they may think, I need to support the policy. So they may have the emotion, happy, or other emotions, because they can spend less money on the training classes for the children. Some parents maybe have the cognition that they think if this policy is not necessary, so they may think my children still need the subject training classes to improve the more grades. So their emotions have the negative to the policy. So I think the thinking and the emotion maybe happens at the same time. That's my answer.
Do you have references to support what you say just now?
Yeah, yeah. In the behind the at the 在最后 at the end of the slide.
At the end, okay.
At the end.
So yes or no, you're
Yeah, yes.
This is multicultural communication, so it's like
Multimedia.
Sorry.
you're not sure. You ask, ask what is it you're not sure. Is it? Do you understand the question first?
No.
No. Okay. So this is in social theory. Every social policy, social action has an intended consequence and unintended consequence, right? So it's a theory. So do you have that in your literature? I don't think you have it because I read it, so I don't think I can answer on your behalf that you don't have it, but it's a good point. But do you understand the question? So is it? Yeah. It's okay. It's okay. It's bad.
I didn't read the relevant papers.
All right. That's good. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. I will adopt your suggestions in my paper. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Muzamil.
thank you.
This feels like a Viva right now because many rounds, right? So, just to note what Dr. Muzaki was saying, so that in theory there's something called intended and unintended consequence in social action that apply for policy. So the policy or an action has an intention, right? Intend to do something, right? Double reduction is to reduce the workload of the children or the students, right? But it might have unintended consequences as well. 他要的，他不要的，他没有什么
不想做的，
不想做的，不过
有
它的后果，
他的收获，
预期的预期的效果和非预期 expected。
Yeah, yes. Yes, yes. Oh, how do you solve the problem? Yes, which is what to capture. Yeah, go
My
ahead.
question is like, do they have a choice? Like, well, I don't want to follow you. I still want to send my child. What will happen to them?
It's a good question there. Yeah. Follow-up question.
I need this policy.
The question from Dr. Bog just now, right? What if the parents do not want to follow?
And parents must to implement this policy.
They have to. So
They
if
have
they
to.
will,
They have no choice.
so the tuition center, like the after school, the academic centers, 就是说那个补习班，就是 they will close it off.
Yeah,
They
already.
close it off.
No,
they don't have a choice, or they have to follow, right?
Yes.
But
more and more parents total them, right?
Yeah.
More and more,
Secretly.
They will secretly do it.
spend money for the students to enter the training classes.
Did the Chinese government actually have the conversations with the parents before they actually implement the policy? This policy， 那个政府有没有跟他们一起家长一起讨论？还没有。
They will communicate with
no,
they
no. Before the policy,
还没有
before issue the policy.
跟之前有没有跟家长一起讨论？
你
yeah,
有呀。
no，他在颁
This
布
can be a
政策
research
之
by
前
itself.
no, the government didn't ask me ask the parents.
Just very
the
suddenly.
suggestions.
Okay.
Yeah, release the
They
policy.
announced, then you have
Yeah,
to do.
yeah.
I have a concern. Also, my question is the research that you're doing. Say if you already come up with an outcome, the parents they are uncomfortable with this policy because of A, B, C. So and then you present it to the government. Will the government actually do something about it?
Or you will disappear.
That's what I'm thinking also.
The government will make issue some orders for the parents.
And they have to
I'm
follow.
just curious
There's no room
whether
for
if,
negotiation.
Your government is receptive to the policy that you are going to suggest. I have concern there. So if you were to come up with an outcome, then if the government is not receptive, so what is your, well, this is further ahead already. So what are you going to do, right? I mean, you can publish, of course, you can publish, but then the intention is to make changes, to make changes, right? But how would you actually get this message across to the government? It's just a thought. It's just a thought. You don't have to answer. It's just a thought.
Thank you.
And also coming back to the term that you use, thoughts, emotion, and behavioral. I'm back to that, but maybe I'm not so familiar with how you will do social policy because I'm not on that side. But because when I was reading it and when I was listening to your presentation, I'm trying to put myself, where is this coming from? What the framework of it, like what is the structure? Is this like, are you talking about sociology of emotion? Are you talking about social psychology? That's what I'm thinking. So because the next step that I will be thinking is that, okay, say if you were to publish, which journals are you going to publish to? So are you going to publish to a sociology journal? Are you going to policy making journal? Or are you going to be like a social psychology journal? So I thought that that could be more clearer, that you could actually deliver that more clearer so that you will know, like, because normally I would like, okay, if I were to do this, where do I intend to publish? Like, and then that will sort of give you a direction.
I will be clear this definition of policy.
It's similar to what Dr. Muzakir had mentioned, just maybe from a different perspective. So it's just I feel that the structure, the
emotion
foundation of it.
about 就是你要明确，你要比如说你有一个未来发那个论文 journal， 你要发到哪儿？有是心理学的还是社会学？心理学、社会学，比如说你 emotion， what's the difference？
Sociology.
刚才那个不也
Psychology and sociology.
Yeah. Yeah.
刚才那个不也提问你 what's the difference？ 就是 emotion 啊 thoughts 有什么不同的 difference， 对吧？你各种用。
I can publish in the psychological and social.
就是你需要统一一下那个 emotion thoughts 到底它都是怎么界定的，是从哪个角度界定？比如说是心理学的概念 definition， 还是社会学的概念，还是什么
Okay.
这个你 you can yeah, it's the framework of your. I feel that it's the foundation, like, so that you have a direction to move towards to. Especially when you need to publish, that's all you talk about now. Then, okay, that macam Fiverr.
Yeah.
用中文说话才能听懂。
没有，他听得懂，不过别人听不懂。It's like secret conversation.
Yeah, like secret conversation. Can't do that. Over there it's okay because Tati can translate to Samir. Arabic corner. Arabic. تفضل.
اهلا دكتور مذاكر، كيف الحال؟
Okay. Go back to our colonial language, okay? English.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, please.
Thank you.
It's not a suggestion, it's a question. You understand that, right? I think it's in your PowerPoint there. What's your theoretical contribution? Literature.
Excuse me?
So excuse me, Dr. Ravani.
Yeah.
Could you make clear for the question for Ivan?
Okay, what is your theoretical contribution or contribution to knowledge, for instance? Yeah. What is the original
研究
contribution?
的理论价值。
Yeah.
嗯
second class 最后一道说一下。second class 最后一道。
I will. This
Is it here or is it before this one?
Significance of the last paragraph is
Okay, last paragraph. Go ahead, Yipeng is your
finally
defend your
the
proposal.
findings of this study will provide valuable insights for future policymaking, and maybe it gives a view for other researchers as a reference. This research used a productive research strategy to generate a new theory about the parents' response to the policy. So the results, the theory, and the new concepts will give a new view, a reference for other researchers. Yeah, that's my answer. I will try to use productive research strategies for key steps. Hanif, turn to the page. The last. Down. Yeah. I use the 4 key steps. First, I will use the semi-structured interview to collect relevant information from the parents and enter the parents' world and capture their knowledge and meaning. And then I will explore the parents' everyday concepts. This is the first order constructs. Then I use technical interpretation. I will try to interpret the parents' their real and deep understanding of the policy about their experiences. And I will try to translate their experiences and perspectives into abstract the concepts. Then at last is build theory building. I will build a new theory about the parents' response to the policy. That's my answer. Thank you.
So connecting back to what Dr. Bob was saying just now, so it's a theory on social action, right? It can be about that, right? So they're actually helping you to think what is your theoretical context, what's your area, theoretical area that you want to contribute to. So the word is social action, yeah, the parent social action, and you can actually connect with unintended consequence, intended and unintended consequence of a particular action or policy in this case, right? So it's good advice. It's not. And back to Dr. Borg, right?
Would you be trying to understand the factors influencing their thoughts and emotions and their behavior? What actually make them have those thoughts, or what make them have those kind of actions? Or you are just gonna see, okay, your thoughts are this, your emotions are this, your behaviors are this.
And I will review the hidden meanings and the patterns about from the parents' response.
So just the patterns and the meaning, and you will not look the reason behind why they are feeling as such.
I need to find the motivation of the parents.
Okay.
为什么会这样的反应？
Because I'm just looking at that, if you want to make policy, to make changes, you also need to understand what is making them taking a certain action. Like what factors, what makes them so anxious? Because there's a study saying that the parents are very they have anxiety about, this kind of stuff.
I will explore the typologies of the parents. I will divide them into several
objective number 3, is it? Your research objective number 3, is it?
你的研究目标的第3。
Yeah, I will reach my the third question.
Yeah, I'm suggesting that maybe you want, so you know the typology, what can you do with the typology? Because we're talking about policies, right? Your significance of your research is that if you want to produce knowledge, that's okay. Maybe you don't have to go why, maybe you don't have a motive. But if you want to make changes, you also need to know, my suggestion is you need to find out, why are the parents so competitive? Why they have anxiety? So, Bourdieu, I think I was reading about this, Bourdieu, socio-cultural capital was one of the things that you can use to explain the reason why parents they are so anxious is because education is a source of, it's a resources for them, for their children. They want to ensure their children will have a better future, but it's so competitive. So when you have that kind of understanding, you will know why the parents are the paradigm of them. You will know why they behaving a certain way. So what you're doing, I feel, is just at the first level, but perhaps you need to go to another level deeper, to find out the reason behind it. Because so you know their emotions, but you don't know what is the reason motivating them to have those emotions. Then you cannot make changes already. You just know the emotions. So I think ABS, the adaptive, also needs you to go a deeper layer, if not mistaken. So my suggestion is that maybe your research objective to consider another one, to add another one. My suggestion is that the factors influencing their paradigms.
I need to, I know what you mean. The factors behind the paradigms. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So what Dr. Borg has suggested is very profound there, because in abductive research, whatever you want to bring up from the social actors, from the parents, right? You can ask, right? Even though they haven't answered that way, you can say, how about, what is your concern right now, right? I mean, some parents who are, I know friends like that, right? The parents let them study whatever you like. You come back, I have a company here you can run, right? So you don't worry about what you want to study, right? But they are parents of middle-class parents, right? Like a lot of us, right? Middle-class parents who are very interested in children's education, right? It's part of social mobility. They want to, whatever. There are other class of students who are well, whatever happens, kind of thing. So the idea is to go to understand the why they say what they say also. So what are the what drives them to do that. So that can lead to some kind of now we can see you. Look at it, we are much clearer now. Yeah.
See you in new light.
See you in new light. Yeah, we need the light. We need the light. Yeah. So that can actually lead and connect to theory as well, right? And then that has implication to policy, right? So we are having discussion there. So I'm functioning like a chair and then reviewer and a supervisor all in one right now. Dr. Muzakir, you have some more input or not? Or you can join us for lunch after this. Challenging and entertaining, isn't it? Oh, okay, right. Entertaining to you. Thank you, Dr. Muzakir. Any more input from Dr.
Just for
Go, no, one or two or three, go ahead. I mean, this is research proposal. A lot of things can be redesigned, rethought, right? So,
it's just like because I am more into like inductive. This is about methodology, so I'm not quite familiar with like abductive. So I'm trying to understand about it more. So it's a very good exposure for myself as well. Just that when you were doing the presentation on the methodology, so you were talking about construction and grounded, right? You were talking about that. Did you? Was it the wrong thing? My point is that in your abstract and also in your presentation, even though that you have like highlight out what is the abductive reasoning strategy,
Research strategy.
yeah. Somehow I feel that it's still on the inductive strategy. It still feels like it's very qualitative to me, and it's the approach is still on the. It can be a bit more convincing to tell us, like convince us why is this not a inductive research. I think when you add that in, right, you have to defend it first. I feel because normally in the market, people usually will go with like either deductive or inductive research. So you also need abductive. So which makes you like stand out. When you stand out, you have to defend yourself. So when you defend yourself, which means you have to say why this is not an inductive, and you have to have a conversation about that. Like you can say that this is very similar to inductive research. However, my research is on abductive, and then what makes you so different about it? So I'm suggesting that you put that in. So because when you write to publish in a paper, you have to defend all that as well. You might as well do it now.
I need to explain the difference between the some.
And then why yours one is abductive, and why you are doing it, and then why is it better than inductive?
inductive 而不是 inductive human research.
Okay. Thank you. 这让我解释是吗？
就是你需要，就是可能你需要向大家解释为什么我要选择 abductive，因为大多数都是 inductive 或者 deductive，but you study 非常突出的，你选了 abductive。Why?
Because the abductive research strategy can help me can deal with the complex social phenomena. And my research content refers to the parents to the policy. This is a social phenomenon, and this strategy can help me to answer my three research questions.
Why not inductive?
Why not inductive? How to say? I didn't consider this question.
Okay.
No, it's okay. Just suggesting that you can add into your proposal.
Okay,
Like Dr.
okay.
Reed said, it's work in progress when you're doing a proposal. So this is the time where you can make it better.
Yeah.
Add more consideration. Because like I said, when you do adaptive, you're standing out there already. Hey, look at me, So then you have to make sure you are able to answer. This is not inductive, by the way, and why? It cannot help me to achieve my research objectives. Why? My suggestion.
Oh, I know. I will notice this advice.
And this could be a very good Viva question too, right? Yeah. So you want to be able to answer the question before, you don't want to answer this question during the Viva. You want to answer the question before the Viva. You be prepared about it, right? Dr. Bo is expert in family dynamics, right? What we can call a more not macro sociology, not more micro, more this type. What you're doing now, what you're doing. So family, small group.
Alienation, sociology of emotion. Yeah, anybody wants to do research can come to me.
Sociology emotion. Sociology emotion. Dr. Muzakir is in education, so yeah, his work is in education, right? So that and his point about policy, intended and unintended consequences is power. And by the way, this is a very very unique phenomena, I suppose, yeah, because I don't think Malaysia can do something like that. Ban all tuition centers, yeah, right? There'll be a revolution tomorrow, to do that.
It's challenging the parents' way of life, I feel.
Yeah,
Their way of life is to make sure their child succeed. How do they succeed? Become successful. If you ban that, they are very. How do I move? So are they going to go against the law? You cannot. You go to jail because you send your child to a tuition center. Would you? You understand what I mean? I think that's very interesting.
But the line of questioning, the line of inquiry is fascinating because in the paradigm of behaviors, right? There might be this content is in the thought and emotion that the behavior can be deviant. They call in neighbor to come in to help cook, right? And then teaches the son, right? Neighbor, right? Or something like that, or cousin who lives in another neighborhood.
Yeah, this is the how do you actually deal with it? Like this is another subject of study that you can consider. What are the actions that you take to counter the double reduction policy?
Yes,
a new form of deviant, right?
New form of deviant, but deviant is, so I mean. Passive resistance, that's right. Passive resistance. Go to Scott Beer, yeah. James Scott, yeah. Weapons of the weak, yeah. I mean, that alone can be a research by itself to study just on parents who will find different ways of managing this. And it's very legitimate, right? If the parents want to have their children succeed, especially for middle class parents, especially, but not just middle class, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Anyways, but this is fascinating how China can do something like this, in a whole country and basically banning tuition, all tuition centers, right? No more POSI, no more, right? Right. It's amazing how they how they can do that, something like that.
Do they
This,
have
huh?
do they have like an online platform where they actually go to? Like because
Online.
Online, we can't call it this name, but the companies will change the form.
but the parents can still send the
Yeah.
Oh, so they can get people to teach them online outside.
Probably they have courses like open learning like MOOC, something like that. I don't know what's the name already, I forgot. So they will have like academics, not academic, teachers teaching online. Do they have that? Like, can they do it for the case?
Actually, every kind of subject, such kind of coaching is illegal.
Oh,
Illegal, yeah, especially on the weekend. You can have the class in the Monday to Friday, but usually Monday to Friday, the students they have their homework from the teachers, so they have no time to go to the school, and it's forbidden in the weekend, no matter online or just physically. But now the smart marketing, the smart company, they already have some solutions. Maybe they could change the name of the class, and later it looks like not a subject class, but actually they teach something like that.
The consequence of outcome, you became very creative.
Become very creative.
Solving the
But the government, I think the government is clear about the situation, so they are doing some actions, especially in the summer vacation, because now it's the summer vacation.
Summer vacation.
Vacation in China. Usually, the parents they hope the students could make some progress and put them into the classes to learn something. So I saw many news come out that the government department they came into the different kinds, no matter what's your name, come into the education companies to check your teaching content.
So they'll come in to check.
Yeah.
You're talking about China government, Chinese government. Why you gonna mess with us, man?
But is this like consistent with the line? Like, because okay, so you need to go into the local university, you have a very high what to say, when you want to enter you have to have this criteria. And then is this like, I'm just curious, like are they like on par, like the government says no, yeah, we want to be very open with our children, we want them to play, we want them to, but then at the end of the day you need to have like 10 A's for you to, so do they like actually meet? This is a question. They are trying to have a very open approach in their students so that they can spend more time with their parents, play, be children. But then suddenly when you go to high school, when you go to like, university, you are hit with the reality where you have to produce, high CGPA. So where did this policy comes from? Makes me question.
The requirements for the college actually didn't have any change, but I've had some discussion with Dr. Ramani. Now there are some policies has already been introduced, especially for the middle school students and the vocational colleges. Maybe there is the topic tomorrow I'm talking about. And now less and less middle school students they have the chance to get into the high school because the Chinese government is doing the education transformations from the bottom. I mean that maybe from the middle school and the primary school. Then that means less and less students they have the chance to get into the universities, and more will concentrate on the vocational to some professional talent.
Is that the intention of the government?
Intention, yes, it's the intention.
So you're saying that about 50% people do not make it from junior high to senior high.
Yeah.
Crazy, man.
That's a real data
They do
from
it over
this
here.
this
Tomorrow
year.
there'll be war.
Change party politics.
Bring to need.
To create a new party.
Change the party then.
Change the party, just easy. You just change the party.
Major is the action among the parents, but I mean
All
the
among
policy from the government. They
Yeah.
want to choose the situation of the social now, because now we have so many graduates from the universities, but maybe they don't have the ability to do something, or they can't find some work. So the government, they're doing some actions to change the situation. Yeah.
So the word nature is used among
Religion used among
Parents.
the parents, among the students, not among the governments.
Yeah, fascinating, man. Yeah. Anyways, is there any more inputs, question? Maybe Dr. February, anyone has some inputs? Some?
Just one idea.
Yeah. Mutadi. Yeah.
I am the PhD student under Dr. Pravani.
Yeah.
Supervision. Yeah. So the related question between the question of Dr. Muzakir and Dr.
With the book. Yeah.
Yeah. So between methodology, objective, and what's different between thought and emotional. The thought sometimes be emotional and sometimes be from mind. The thought in our mind sometimes from heart and
Yeah.
sometimes from our mind.
Yeah.
So we cannot measure the thought where it come from. This is one question. So this is related with the objective. So the students should be go to the parents to ask them what is their thought, what is their emotional about the double abduction reduction policy, right? So the objective research strategy is related with phenomenology, not related with the interpretation or explanation or deep understanding. No, the researcher go to the social actor to ask them about the phenomena, about the event, about the problem, to get answer from them and to write their answer and analyze their answer. Just what their thought, what their paradigm, what their perspective. This is different from inductive research strategy. Inductive research strategy go to read everything, to check everything by yourself, and to give your analysis, your interpretation about everything. So this is different. So because she put this question emotional and thought, she need to have objective research strategy. This is my point of view. Because she need to understand the parents' answer about this is policy. In this way, he can do her research. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, super important. You want to respond to that, or you want to say thank you?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Muzakir, for your time and your contribution. I envy you. I want to go there and eat soup buntut over there. Yeah. Thank you. Alright, you miss Roti Canai. Okay. Can always come back here. Thank you so much, Dr. Bob, for
Pleasure.
Dr. Bob. We've gone through a long journey in USM, so a long time ago. My favorite student as well.
Favorite lecturer.
Thank you so much, and Dr. February, for making time and staying on, even though there's a conference right now in Eastern Hotel, right? So the whole of social science is there except for Dr. February. Right? So thank you so much, and those who are present online as well. I see some postgraduate students from CenPRIS. Now, by the way, the name of CenPRIS has changed to CenPRIS. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah. Change to CenPRIS now. CenPRIS. CPR.
CPR.
Lives, huh? CPR, yeah. CPR. CPR is CPR. I don't know what it is. Short form.
First aid.
First aid, trying to save people's lives.
Policy research.
Yeah.
Center
And the police research.
Ah,
Yeah.
More international.
Maybe that's why the link, the website of the CenPRIS.
That's right. I think so. I think so. Thank you so much. There's food outside. There's nasi lemak and other kuih outside there. And what is it? Thank you, Hanif, for being the CTO again, Chief Technology Officer. All right. So we will adjourn. Tomorrow we have another session. Leah will be presenting on what she's talking right now, right? About
Should I talk about
yeah. What time is it?
what time? 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock. So 10 o'clock. So we'll have it here as well, right?